You ever seen a whole room pretend nothing happened just so they wouldn't have to face their own shame? Let me tell you about a morning in a little town where silence spoke louder than any words. There was this woman, Miss Evelyn Harper, 72 years old, retired special ed teacher, the kind of person who raised half the kids in town without anybody keeping count. She'd never been in trouble, never made noise, just one of those quiet figures you pass on the street and think you know, but you don't. One Tuesday, she decided to step into a coffee shop called Mason's Table. Folks said their brew smelled like memories, like home. Evelyn thought maybe it was time to treat herself, sit by the window, watch the sun come up with a hot cup in her hands. She pushed that glass door open, and the little bell above it jingled like an invitation. But inside, it was like she'd walked into a room where everyone had been waiting to hate her. No words at first, just looks, those slow measuring stares that say more than insults ever could. A waitress muttered, "Probably lost. Don't look like she can afford coffee here." Somebody chuckled under their breath. Even the man by the window lowered his magazine, just to sneer. Old folks like that should stick to the bus stop. Evelyn kept walking. She didn't bark back, didn't leave. She'd learned a long time ago that sometimes silence keeps you safe. She made it to the counter. The girl working there didn't even look up, just dropped a flat, "What'll you have?" And before Evelyn could answer, the girl cut in, "We're out of black coffee. Want the cheap one?" Like it was a joke, only she understood. Evelyn nodded because all she wanted was a warm cup, not a fight. They shoved a flimsy to-go cup her way. She took it, turned, and sat down in the far corner. Now here's where the air shifted. A uniform walked in. Officer Darren Cole. He wasn't some decorated hero, just a local cop who liked making people nervous. He had that smug walk, the kind that said the room belonged to him. His eyes landed on Evelyn. He smirked. "Well, look at this. A bridge dweller sitting with paying customers." He said it loud enough so the whole cafe could hear, low enough to deny if anyone challenged him. But no one challenged him. Evelyn lifted her gaze steady, not bowed, but not daring him either. She just looked. And he hated that, because silence, the kind that doesn't flinch, can slice through pride sharper than a blade. Then out of nowhere, Cole reached for her cup. Folks thought he was going to dump it in the trash or push it off the table. But no, he tilted it right over her chest. Scalding coffee splashed across her blouse, dripping down the fabric she'd mended herself a dozen times. He leaned back with a grin. "Now you know what it feels like to sit in the wrong seat, Grandma." The cafe laughed, not everyone, but enough. A man toasted his mug and muttered, "Black coffee fits the color." A woman by the door added, "Guess this place doesn't scream customers anymore." Nobody called him out. Nobody asked if she was hurt. They just kept sipping, flipping pages, pretending. Evelyn didn't cry. She didn't scream. She reached into her old handbag, pulled out a frayed white handkerchief, and started dabbing the stain. Slow, steady, like she'd done it before. Her face didn't even twitch. That's what rattled the room. Because everyone expected a scene, and when it didn't come, their own silence suddenly felt heavier than bricks. In the corner, a teenage girl named Alana Wright, 16 braids tied back, sat frozen. Her hands shook, but she slid her phone onto the table and hit record. She knew if she didn't, nobody would believe it. That shaky little clip caught it all. Cole's smug laugh, the snickers, Evelyn's trembling hand with that handkerchief. Alana didn't add music, didn't edit. She just posted it with a line. "This is what happens when you're old, black, and quiet in this town." Within minutes, the video spread. Yeah. Kids from school reshared it, then neighbors, then local blogs. At first, the comments were cruel drama for attention, another staged sob story. Some even turned Evelyn's photo into a meme. But then, something shifted. Old pictures surfaced. People started recognizing her. A veteran posted a faded photo of Evelyn volunteering at the training center decades ago. A bookstore owner wrote, "She gave me my first shelf when I opened shop. Never forgot that." One after another, her old students, now adults, spoke up. She taught me to read when no one else had the patience. She was the only one who called me by my real name. And the cafe, that corner table where she'd sat, folks stopped touching it. The cup she left behind, the handkerchief stained with coffee, stayed right there. Next morning, her 8-year-old grandson, Marcus, walked in alone, set a fresh cup of coffee next to hers, and wrote in chalk on the wood, "For her." No one dared erase it. That table stopped being just furniture. It became a witness. But the biggest twist came when an old, retired officer, Harold Monroe, shuffled in one rainy afternoon. He laid down a laminated photo, Evelyn in uniform, muddy boots, holding a little blond boy wrapped in a blanket after the flood of '96. Harold's voice cracked. "That boy is Darren Cole. She saved his life." The cafe went silent. No one laughed anymore. The cop who poured coffee on her chest had once survived because she pulled him from a river. Word exploded. Reporters showed up. Cole tried to spin it, claimed it was an accident. The cup slipped, but the video didn't lie. And when asked if he knew who she was, he said, "I didn't know." Didn't matter. That was the final nail. Because one sharp comment online summed it up. You didn't know because you didn't care she was worth knowing. Then came the moment nobody expected. A tall man walked into Mason's table, Evelyn's son, Daniel Harper. He wasn't loud, didn't flash credentials. He just sat at that same table, folded his mother's stained handkerchief, and laid it beside the cold cup. Folks whispered, "That's the federal prosecutor, the one who's been shaking up the justice system." The room froze, because suddenly they realized this wasn't just an old woman they dismissed. This was the mother of a man the entire department feared crossing. Daniel never said a word, didn't need to. That cloth spoke louder than anything. The story spread beyond the town, beyond the state. Students painted a mural of a handkerchief turning into wings on the library wall. Notes covered the cafe, people writing memories, regrets, apologies. And slowly silence turned into confession. But here's the thing, nobody forgot that at the start, almost everyone sat quiet, complicit. They didn't speak until the world forced them to. And that table in the back, folks call it Miss Eve's table now. Not because of the coffee or the chalk words, but because one woman, too tired to fight, too dignified to scream, made them all see themselves in a way they couldn't ignore. So I'll ask you, what's worse, the man who poured the coffee or the room full of people who watched and said nothing? Drop your thoughts below, because stories like this ain't just about one cruel act. They're about every silent witness who chose comfort over courage. And if this hits you the way it hit me, share it. Because sometimes the quietest act, the way someone refuses to bow their head, shakes the system harder than 1,000 shouts ever could. Now tell me, would you have stayed quiet, or would you have stood up